CEO of Beppo, and I'm joined by Matt Pashensky, CEO of Pact, and we are here again to talk about AI and what it's like running a business that is AI first and trying to ingest all this new information that's coming our way and kind of build businesses around it. So, Matt, talk to me. There's been conversations about kind of professional services and AI, and I have to admit it's not something I'm very close to, but you've been noodling on and thinking about it this week. Tell us why we should care
Yeah,
and what
the
it
the
means.
headline that I saw and that you saw, and we both wanted to talk about today was the AI taking over the $20 trillion services industry. And I started the service industry a company 10 years ago and it went really well. And so every VC I talk to, I'm like, oh, services industry is enormous. There's 500,000 services firms in the United States. It's like an absolutely enormous market. And it's ripe for disruption. Nobody really when I say this, they're like services. I'm about, I think about the same 45, product companies as everybody else, and they don't really think about this enormous, pretty high tech industry that adopts, a lot of technology. And so it's really great to see people thinking about how AI is going to transform services industry. And the reason I want to talk about it this week is not just that headline, but I was talking to somebody who runs it's a services industry adjacent, which is a car dealership. And they were saying, oh man, we're having a hard time because we have all these customer support agents and they keep quitting and they take all the knowledge of our customer away. And then, the car industry is something that is, yeah, there's you call it your service station and your service customers, but really the same thing that they're seeing is happening at a much bigger scale. And you look at professional services. And for them, the example I always give is that you have like this fantastic relationship, and this is the impact of AI, is you have this fantastic relationship with the customer. You think, oh, the customer loves us. And then that key employee that's talking to the customer all the time leaves. And then, 6 or 8 months later, you lose that customer. The deals just stop getting bigger, and the revenue kind of bleeds away. And what you realize was your company didn't have a relationship with your customer. Your services industry company didn't have a relationship with the customer. Your employee did. And it's not that your employees shouldn't. That's the only way a company can interface with another company is two employees talking to each other. But what AI can do, and I think the advantage for the services industry is that every time a company talks, one of their employees talks to one of their employees, you're now building a set of data. You're building a set of commitments between those companies, a set of ideas about the future, which you might also call opportunities that should be ingested into your CRM. And if you're doing that really consistently, then those employee interactions become interactions between companies, which is the lifeblood of the service industry. And so that was kind of one of the points in there, but I think it's something that I'm
Yeah,
seeing pretty frequently is that like relationships are actually the backbone of many, many industries. And AI has the ability to transform how relationships are sustained between these economic entities and not just their employees who leave every 2 to 3 years.
well, and in sort of human-powered businesses, this is a space that we play in. Um, Continuity is really important, right? So you talked about that employee standing up, walking away, and they're, crap, I've got to train up another person. We've got to do that onboarding. We've got to do all of that. And so it's not just about what you're talking about is kind of building that relationship and having continuity in terms of the relationship, but continuity in terms of just the basic output. Like, hey, we need somebody who's able to answer these questions. So we spend quite a bit of time. The really nice thing about that, by the way, when you're talking to a customer, they're like, well, how does this AI thing work? And we just say, well, we're just going to train it. And they're like, how are we going to train it? Well, for example, this piece of information, can you just write it down or give it to us? Do you have a training document that you use for a human? Like, yeah, let's just grab it. I always go back to the product aspect and the kind of how do people consume a product which is now AI native. Um, AI kind of there's this really nice um, comparison that you can make, right, between AI products, which are quite human-like in terms of, excuse me, in terms of how you onboard them into your business. So it's a space that we've had quite a bit of success on. Not the professional services, which I think is something, and we have a buddy who's got a business in that space. But do you have any thoughts on professional services, how that's going to work, as opposed to sort of more, I don't know, pedantic? Off pedantic
Yeah,
isn't the right
when
word,
you
but
think about
simplistic.
a normal transactional business, that's not what you would call professional services. It's generally they're selling something, right? And so there's a very kind of discrete, linear set of steps around that product. So you have lead generation, and then you have the sales process, and then you have the post-sale process. You might have a renewal process for your employees. You have an onboarding, an offboarding, your standard operating procedure. And the thing that characterizes professional services for me is that they're highly relationship driven, which is why we generally call them professional and services. It's just, you're working with people. It's a people business. And to the extent that they're so heavily dependent on the quality of the people that you hire and the relationships, it's because those steps in the customer engagement are not linear. They're not broken into those discrete pieces that can each individually be optimized, right? And so if you're selling the same thing 100 times in a row in the same way, you can have, pretty standard workflows and pretty standard, lead generation, all that stuff. And it can be highly automated because it's standard and it's repeatable, right? And so, that's what SaaS has done for the last 20 years is just take all of those kind of what we would call non-professional services, product businesses, and make them very repeatable and take a lot of the cost out of the business. For professional services, it's relationship driven, and all of those same things have to occur. You have to get customers and drive leads and then service them, but they don't occur in that straightforward, hey, this customer is a new customer. Like all your customers are new customers because you always have some new employee at the, let's say you're selling to a big conglomerate. There's always a new employee, there's always a new project, there's always a new thing. And so all of those things about the relationship, generating new work, generating new relationships, sustaining relationships, renewing relationships, are all happening all the time. And it's a constant interaction. And so AI now has the ability to take that super complicated process that generally isn't amenable to just like, oh, this is now a new opportunity. It's like everything's an opportunity. There's always something new happening. And so you have to kind of just rely on these experienced people who are very hard to hire. Well, now AI actually has the capability of linearizing to some extent that constant, messy, ongoing process that's happening in human conversations. And those LLMs can now dissect the whole conversation and break it out. Hey, there's a new opportunity. Hey, there's a requirement. Hey, there's a problem. And then individually handle those with automation in the same way that you would a more.
We often will start meetings and say, hey, how was the weekend, right? We're getting connected with that individual, right? We're building, that's what we call relationship. And then everything else happens on top of that, right? So when I say to you, Matt, hey, Matt, I've got a really tough question. It's a bit personal. I want to ask you about this. I get to do that because we have a relationship, right? Or maybe I get to put you on the spot about underperforming because we have some trust, we have some relationship. So how's that going to work in an AI world where human conversations are not just about the informational aspect?
Yeah. Is the author Alison Woodbrooks?
That's exactly who it is. Yeah.
So, in this tradition, that kind of phatic conversation at the beginning, how's your weekend? That's the first thing we said before we started the podcast. How's your weekend?
What did you call it? Phatic?
Phatic.
Oh, educate.
There's names for all
this. Is
phatic conversation is generally of a sort of like saying, how's the weather? You know how the weather is. It's kind of like it's just to get things going, and it doesn't have any real informational content. It's more, and it generally falls, especially that first 5 or 6 minutes maybe of a sales call. I like one way it's been described as attunement. It's something very important that happens in conversations is the only thing that matters is where there's risk and pain, right? Like those are like the big things that I'm looking for in a professional services conversation. That's been my job a long time. And if you check in with somebody and you assume they want to talk about something, and that morning something terrible's happened to them, and the only thing on their mind is there's been a security breach or something else, and you start talking about things without attuning to what's actually at stake for them in that moment, which might be, hey, I'm sick. Hey, let's talk tomorrow. Or, hey, this security thing's going on. Hey, let's stop. Let's go do something else. Or, oh, you know what? The biggest thing for me is a potential acquisition. How can we engage with that? But if you have a conversation about something that you thought someone was excited about, and they're excited about something completely different, then nothing you say is at stake for them. And in fact, there's not going to be any information transfer. There's not going to be any commitments made. And that's how you can start to break down conversations. So that attunement is just a natural skill. You're Irish, like they're famously, good at conversation and uh, breaking things down. But I think every culture has those different ways of somewhat attuning. And I think if you can pay attention in conversation to what does this person care about, you're going to be much more successful. Now, the advantage of AI, to bring it back to the discussion we're having now, is now that attunement can happen not just from the individual conversation, but all your previous conversations and all other conversations that people are having with people at that company are now available to attune you. And so one of the things that we've been building that's most popular, which, you know, I like it, but it's people love it, is the ability to say, hey, what's going on for this particular project or for this particular group of people before you enter that meeting. And that can all be done automatically. And that's a form of attunement that isn't just like, how's the weekend, but also, hey, I know that, you know, you walk in with a client. Hey, I know that this has been a problem for you and I'm sensitive to it. Is such a great way to immediately jump into a shared space where you're both going to be having meaningful interactions and not just talking past each other. Sorry, I went on a big rant. But
No. This is perfect, right? So fast forward a little bit, and I can completely see the ability of AI to do that attunement, right? And even more than that, you know, hey, we talked 3 weeks ago. You said you had a great weekend. Your kid had a soccer game, and your kid's name was Mark. AI is going to remember that 2 weeks later. It's going to start a meeting and say, "Oh, how's Mark doing? Any more soccer?" Right? And what I wouldn't use attunement for that. What I think we're doing in those moments is rounding out the person on the other side, right? We're looking at a screen at each other. We're two-dimensional, right? We're making that individual three-dimensional, four-dimensional, and that's important as we build relationship over time. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build that relationship, that connection. I think what we're saying here is AI is going to be able to do that. Meaning, if you flip that around, if I'm the human talking to AI, I'm actually going to have a relationship. I'm going to have some feelings, some emotions around this AI. Like, hey, I like this AI. He always asks me about my son. You know, is that going to happen
we
in a
absolutely, and
professional environment?
you don't have to talk to an AI as if it's a person. People already understand the value. It's not building a relationship. That's not the goal. You always say like, oh man, that customer is really unhappy. I'm like, just stop. It's not your job to make that customer happy. It's your job to fulfill your commitments to that customer and make sure they know it, right? Get them to trust you, but that trust is for the purpose of doing things together. And relationships are not there just to, hey, I love that guy. I mean, playing people love. That's sometimes a requirement for a business relationship, but a lot of times not a necessity. What's important is when you're having a conversation, you're both talking about things that you both care about. And getting to that point where you can both care. Part of it, you know, getting to that point of that you both are in the same room with each other, like you said, even though you're on the phone, is, yeah, I care about you as a person. I'm someone who is trustworthy in the sense that I'm trying to get you promoted or I'm trying to accomplish goals for you. That's an important part. But getting back to like how people are going to interact with AI, people get at some level that it would be great to have a meaningful conversation with somebody and to get into a meeting that was not 45 minutes of filler. And if I interact with this AI, that AI is going to help me build a basis of mutual understanding about the topic at hand, about our business relationship. We'll be talking about things that are important to me. They will not be asking questions that are meaningless. We won't be talking past each other. And if I just talk to this AI for 4 or 5 minutes, it's going to do more for me than spending 45 minutes in a meeting. And I think people get that now. And I said, that's my vision of, I mean, you don't have to act like the computer cares about you because it really is not going to for quite a while in the way that you want.
Yeah, that's something we'll need to track over time because when projects, let's say, are going well, that's great. When you get into a negotiation, let's say, just as an example, and now you're most definitely on two sides of the table, that relationship, that trust, at least that understanding is quite important. So it's a very huge, we're now away from the informational and into we keep using the term relationship. There's something more than that, but it's going to be interesting to see how we butt up against that and where we cross that line very comfortably in an AI world and we talk about our kid playing soccer at the weekend, and then in other situations like, no, you're just an AI. I don't know why I'm talking to you.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll see what happens with that.
AI is one of them, but you know, the original, I think, purpose of those Google Glass, remember?
Yeah.
Which is like the original metaverse kind of product, right? Like maybe the cell phone is the real winner, but the idea that like you imagine you're Sergey Brin, you're a super billionaire, you meet 1,000 people a day, and you just can't remember anybody's name, let alone do they have children, what company they worked at, that context, right? And so I think his original dream he got really excited about it, right? Was I'm going to walk into a room and immediately be oriented into conversations with people that are meaningful. And so that's like a huge superpower, is to be able to go into any relationship and just immediately hit the ground running in terms of what's going on with that person. What world does this person live in? Because we all think, oh, we live in the world. Donald Trump's president and this is my address. And that's not the world business occurs in. Business occurs in what is going to get you promoted? What's really at risk for your company? How can I help you? Or how can you help me? Those are the things that are not, they don't exist in the world. Like they don't exist out, like they're not objects. And I think getting to those things, right? The Google Glass was that, for him, is that mechanism. Now he could just probably pay some guy a lot of money to like keep good notes. And anytime he comes in, somebody briefs him for 2 or 3 minutes and he immediately sounds like a super genius. Like Bill Clinton was great about that. He would just remember people. He's probably getting briefed 4 or 5 minutes in advance, and then he'd walk in the room and do his magic trick. He's like, "Oh, I remember you from that stop I made 6 years ago." And someone's like, "Oh, Bill Clinton remembered me." It's like, no, somebody else wrote something down once, pulled out their notes, briefed him before he walked in the room, and it's a really good trick. AI can make that possible for everybody, and it's like, I need to just really, looking at someone's LinkedIn is not going to give you an understanding of what's at stake for them nearly as well as an AI who's maybe talked with them for 20, 30 minutes, or all with their peers, or all of those things, right?
Yeah. You know what it makes me there's another topic we're going to talk about. So let's segue into it. We're headed into this period of time now where AI is going to be able to generate that summary instantly for us across all this massive data, put it right in front of us. And the limitation is going to be, how quickly can we get it in here? How quickly can we absorb it? And so there was an announcement last week. We talked a little bit about it last on the podcast. OpenAI launched their new image generation, and it's very, very, very powerful. No one's really people are talking about Ghibli style and all this other stuff and all the rest, which is interesting conversation. But to me, I was looking at it straight away going, oh my goodness, like I'm a visual thinker. And so it is a hyper efficient way to get information into the human brain. Like visual stuff is really, really interesting. So there's that's the next kind of bottleneck ahead of us. I'm sort of interested in you've done some multimodal stuff as well. What are you seeing? What are you thinking about? We have this massive data that we can summarize quickly, and we want to get into the human brain to be digested and reflected back, generally to make some sort of decision type of feedback. How is that showing up at PACT, if it is?
Yeah, when we say multimodal, we mean both text and audio, and then also visual. And I'm assuming we're going to have video as part of like that multimodal experience. And what's different is, let's break down audio from a multimodal perspective. One way of doing it is you have text, and then that text is audio file. You have an audio file, it's broken down into text, and then that text is ingested into an LLM, and then the LLM operates on text, right? Yep. What else? What's missing? Well, what about person inflection in their voice? In that kind of transformation process, that audio is converted into text, and any kind of subtlety about what that person was saying is lost because you don't hear their voice, you don't hear their inflection.
It's why we have emojis, right, on text messages. It's the same issue.
It's exactly, right? I mean, it's solving that problem. Or someone saying a word that is this homonym but very differently spelled. Well, once it's spelled in a certain way, it's a lot of work to think, what is a word that sounds like that word that they might have been saying, and then people complain about that a lot with text. It's just, it always misspells this word, right? Or it assumes this name is some other word, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that if you incorporate the entire text file, now it's not thinking, is this spelling right? But it's, what is that? What is a word that sounds like that? And so you get a much richer kind of understanding of that audio. And then simultaneously, I think one of the big things that happened this year in the last 12 months is that they released voice that can have inflection, and you can say talk like a pirate, and the voice will sound like a pirate. And so that's really multimodal. Is not text to image, but it's generate the image yourself and evaluate the image as you're and understand the subtleties of the image. For human communication, and you start to think through that, now you're entering a realm that's much deeper than just generate text that looks right, but you're actually kind of saying, what is the perception that is associated with that? And you're interfacing at that level of perception, and it's a much deeper level. So it's not just, you say multimodal because that's the big jump between like, it's actually operating directly on the audio and not through an audio transcription. But I think for a human being, it's really operating at our level of perception much more directly of what would we perceive with our eyes, what we hear with our ears, or how would our emotional state interact with this document.
Yeah, I think the other promise here is that, depending on the time of the day, I want to consume or ingest that information in different ways. Right. I personally in the morning, I'm able to read stuff better. Right. In the afternoon, maybe I want to hear audio. And then I'm like in the middle of a conversation with my AI and I'm like, I gotta go. Crap, I gotta get the subway home. Let's continue this on text message because I'm not gonna be able to talk to you on the subway. So I think that we'll see not multimodal is available to us, but tuned multimodal, right? So over time, we'll learn out that Matt likes to watch videos versus read in the morning, or he's an attorney and he only wants to read stuff, or he's halfway through something and he wants to switch, especially with the video generation. I think that's going to be really, really interesting. And
yeah, and I think like the best example of that tuning, like just making sure that text is appropriate for the situation and the possibilities there, where it was the release of the 4.0 image generation,
yeah,
which was different because it used to take text, send it over to a text generator or to an image generator via text, and then hold the image back. And then something subtle happened and said, no, we're going to directly incorporate all the context of this interaction into the image and assess the image in the same way we're assessing this conversation. And it produced a very, very, I mean, it was just a night and day difference, so much more performance. And it's like, what if it starts assessing us in the same way and assessing our psychology? It just seems like the same rough pattern. It's like, how do I get through to this person in a way that's really going to resonate? And I think that's your segue from the last conversation. It's like, what happens when we really, even with the same power of the transformers and GPUs and everything, just incorporating these things together had a big shift in our perceptual ability visually. And I think there's just so much more we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, like when we do my whole career, like it's the funnest part is like the ideation, right? It's like, oh, we could do this and we could do that. And in my mind, there's blocks and there's squares and there's lines here and there's patterns. And so going back to the image generation, if I was having a conversation in a room with a bunch of people and we're ideating and I turned around to the AI and I said, visualize that for me quickly. And up on the screen goes, and I'm like, oh no, that's good. The way I was thinking was this was over here and slide that over there. That's the functionality that they just rolled out, right? Is the ability, which wasn't there before. Like DALL-E generated an image, and you're like, that's cool, but could you change this? And it really started it again.
It just started from scratch, exactly.
Yeah, now it actually can isolate components in the imagery and do that. I love all the cool images and everything, but I think we're all missing the point here. That it's like we've given this thing arms and legs now that actually work, and it's going to open up a bunch more interesting stuff. And so let's see what happens in the next 6 months in terms of products that actually harness it. But I think it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, and it's like there's the five senses. There's so many different modalities of perception beyond just the basic, modality of the visible or the modality of the audible. But we talk about like, the modality of like, is this something that's going to appeal to this particular group of people? That's something we have like such an inbuilt sensibility after years of working in business. It's like, is this going to resonate with this crowd? Imagine an AI that has that same jump in just being able to get a sense of where all these people are and produce a slide deck is the simplest thing, or just a chart that really breaks things down at the right level. It's a drudgery, and it gets in the way of our ability to kind of influence people and create consensus.
Yeah.
It's like
slide decks.
It's not directly just like a one-to-one, image generation. It's like generate a sense of community among these people. And that's something we know how to do, but it's like something we haven't really talked about in terms of the five senses.
Yeah. And I think the other thing we're going to be able to do is combine the senses, right? You're pitching a customer with a slide deck in the olden days, you might roll in and you've printed out an image, that they look at and they're like, oh, I love the aesthetic. And then hang on, we've got this in video for you now, right? And now we're going to call an agent and interact as if we were on the phone. Like, wow, hold on, this is crazy. And that might make sense for that particular type of business, right? And you can see, because there's something about combining those senses that is even more powerful. So to when you smell something and you're like, oh my God, that brings me back to this point in time, right? It's a combination of those different things happening. So I think we're going to have, I think about product a lot. When I think about product that is able to do that, harness multiple senses, multiple modes, I think we're going to have some really interesting stuff. What they are, I don't know. I need a little bit more time to think about that.
Those are kind of like those second and third order effects. Maybe the AI selects the right food for you to kind of like be in the mood. But that's the thing. It's like this complex, as you add text plus video or text plus image, it does radically change to consider both simultaneously. And then you have all the permutations of like,
yeah,
what is our sense of status is like a big one. Like we have these other senses that are not multimodal yet. But imagine an AI that was sensitive to the status relationships in a room. Right?
Yeah.
Like that would be very powerful. And this is something that we're already doing. It's like we generate these reports based off our data set that we're collecting at Pact. And you build one for one group of people. And the first step is you just build one. And everyone's like, that's great. But you're like, you know what? Half of this report isn't even appropriate for this person. And so then you build another one for another person, another one. And so you have this sense of what's appropriate for people. But imagine an AI that really understood all the senses we have of like, no, that's inappropriate. This is not the type of thing, or that's a danger for them. That's probably not something you want to bring up, or like, and then you have like this multimodal. There's more that the number of modes is not 5 or 4 or whatever.
Yeah, it's permutations, combinations.
It's just every permutation, and there's all these other social senses that are not even considered in our physical sensories yet. And I think that hopefully we'll see that same incorporation of at least some kind of agent or some subsystem that is able to take that perspective and to accommodate that sensation that we have of danger, fear, and social status. Yeah, it's really interesting. This is a great conversation because I'm realizing that there's something way bigger while we're talking. I don't think I've ever really considered it.
There you go. All right. I'm going to ask you my usual question, but I'm going to give you a bit of time to think about. My usual question is, what did you see this week that really engaged you?
You start. What did you see this week that you're excited about?
Well, I just gave it to you. I mean, that whole conversation was it, that I think we all missed the boat on the new image generation. We're like, oh my God, Ghibli style, that's brilliant, and do this, and then oh look, there's a little like make me into a toy, in the kind of shrink wrap thing. That wasn't the thing that when I sat down and thought about it, the thing that I took away was, oh my God, like I'll wrap it up by saying this: communication. The way that I was taught sort of communication structurally when I in business school was, it is your responsibility as a communicator to encode the information and deliver it in a way that the other person can receive it. If they don't understand it, it's your fault, not theirs. Right? And so when I think about that, when I think about the image generation, you give me another set of tools that are fantastic that I can actually use to do that. So as you can tell, I'm pretty jazzed about it.
No, I think it's huge. And, for me, that's probably the biggest thing in the last few weeks is it also created a big meme. And I'll just use it. So the Studio Ghibli, a lot of people said, no, they're doing copyright infringement. It's like, no. This is a fundamentally creative thing. Yeah, we're doing copyright infringement, sure. Like it's totally taking someone's intellectual property, using it. But it was like one of the first times with AI beyond like the original stuff. Like it's been months where I've just felt like there's this kind of, we're narrowing down our aperture of human. It's like AI is going to do this and it's going to do this and it's going to do this. And there really just wasn't a feeling that there was anything left for us. And then, it's nice to see a creative burst where there was something that we wouldn't have done before and that we wouldn't have thought to do. It was just like reimagine the world, connect in new ways, like have fun. And it felt like it's been a long time since we actually had fun with AI. It just felt like this steady doom of AI is getting so good that you're just not going to have a job and it's going to replace you and things like that. And I think it's worth using this moment to reflect on, no, it's not going to take your job away. I got a lot of like enthusiasm about what you said. It's like, no, I'm going to be in a room with clients and finally be able to express myself in a couple minutes rather than go away for 6 weeks and build presentations. No, I'm going to do it in real time. They're going to have that connection with what I'm talking about as we do it. And I just think the image generation moment has been fun, just in terms of it's new. It's something new. It's creative. Yeah. It's not just the doom of being replaced.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. We land the plane, wrap it up right there.
Let's touch down and take off next week. See you around.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye.
Bye.